Sit on my lap, or the man behind you will kill us both. Elena Marlowe froze in the center of the Moretti Hotel ballroom, a silver tray trembling between her hands as 200 of Chicago's wealthiest guests stared at her. Less than 10 seconds earlier, a champagne glass had shattered across her black uniform, and Vanessa Vale, the rail-thin socialite expected to become Dante Moretti's fiancée, had loudly accused Elena of spilling it on purpose. Laughter had spread beneath the crystal chandeliers. Elena had heard the whispers before. Too big for the dress, too clumsy for a room like this, too desperate to belong. She had learned to survive humiliation by lowering her eyes and finishing her shift, because the overdue rent notice in her purse did not care about her pride. But now Dante Moretti, the most feared Mafia boss in the Midwest, was watching her from the head of the long velvet booth. He wore a charcoal suit with no tie, his expression calm enough to terrify everyone who knew his name. Criminals feared his silence more than another man's threats. Politicians returned his calls before the first ring ended. Yet beneath that cold control lived a loneliness no amount of money had touched since betrayal had taken his younger brother 5 years ago. Elena did not know any of that. She only knew he had just ordered her onto his lap in front of the entire ballroom. "Mr. Moretti, I think you have mistaken me for someone else," she said, forcing her voice not to break. Vanessa laughed sharply. "Trust me, Dante would never mistake you for a woman he wanted." The insult landed harder because several guests smiled. Elena's round face flushed, but she did not shrink. She placed the tray on a nearby table and met Vanessa's gaze. "You already blamed me for something I didn't do. You don't get to decide what else I am." The room fell silent. Dante's eyes narrowed, not with anger, but interest. Most people begged in his presence. Elena, exhausted and embarrassed, had defended herself without insulting anyone back. Then Dante noticed the reflection in the mirrored wall behind her. A man near the service entrance had one hand inside his jacket. The same man had entered using credentials belonging to a waiter who had called in sick. Dante's security team had missed him, but Elena had not. Minutes earlier, she had quietly moved a little girl away from that doorway after seeing the stranger watching the exits. Courage without applause. Instinct without reward. Dante stood, crossed the 6 feet between them, and took Elena's wrist with surprising care. He did not yank her. He gave her 1 second to read the warning in his face. Then a server cart crashed near the entrance. Guests turned toward the sound. Dante pulled Elena down onto his lap just as a small red dot swept across the place where her heart had been. His arm locked around her waist, solid and protective, while his other hand slipped beneath the table. Elena's breath caught. She was painfully aware of every eye in the room, of Vanessa's stunned expression, and of the warmth of Dante's palm against the curve of her side. But his grip held no mockery, no disgust, and no careless entitlement. It was the grip of a man shielding something he had already decided mattered. "Do not move," he murmured against her ear. "There is a shooter near the west door." Elena's fear sharpened into focus. "He has a second man by the kitchen," she whispered. Dante went still. "How do you know?" "Because the one by the kitchen hasn't looked at the stage once. He keeps watching you." Dante glanced at the mirrored champagne tower and saw the second attacker exactly where she had said. With one subtle movement of his fingers, his guards closed both exits. Music continued playing, but the atmosphere changed. Men in dark suits moved through the crowd, while guests remained unaware of how close the evening had come to disaster. Vanessa stepped forward, furious rather than frightened. "Dante, take your hands off her. Everyone is watching." Dante looked up slowly. "Good." One word silenced the room. Elena tried to rise, but his arm tightened just enough to stop her. "You're safe here," he said. No man had said those words to her in years. She hated that they nearly brought tears to her eyes. "Why are you protecting me?" she asked. Dante studied the woman everyone else had dismissed. He saw the stain on her uniform, the tiredness she tried to hide, and the courage that had just saved his life. Then he leaned close enough that only Elena could hear his next words. "Because you are not the target," he whispered. "You are the reason they came." Before she could ask what he meant, the lights went out, a woman screamed, and Dante's hand closed around Elena's as someone locked the ballroom doors from the inside. Emergency lights flooded the ballroom in a dim red glow, turning the crystal walls the colour of warning. Dante Moretti rose with Elena still secured against his chest, placing his body between her and the darkness before guiding her behind the heavy marble bar. "Stay down," he ordered, but his voice softened when he saw fear tighten her face. "I will not let anyone touch you." Across the ballroom, guests crouched beneath tables while Dante's guards moved with silent precision. A struggle broke out near the kitchen, followed by the crash of metal and a sharp cry. Dante lifted 2 fingers, and every armed man under his command stopped at once. "No shots unless I give the word," he said. "There are civilians in this room." Even in darkness, his authority was absolute. Elena pressed her back against the marble and tried to understand what he had whispered before the lights failed. "You said I was the reason they came." Dante studied her for a moment, then removed his suit jacket and placed it around her shoulders, covering the champagne stain and the torn sleeve of her uniform. "Do you own a silver locket?" Elena's hand flew to her throat. The necklace was hidden beneath her collar, the only thing her mother had left her before dying 12 years earlier. "How do you know about that?" Dante's expression hardened. "Because the man at the west door had a photograph of you wearing it." Before Elena could answer, one of Dante's guards appeared beside the bar. "Both attackers are alive. One had a burner phone. The last message says the woman has the key." Elena shook her head. "I don't have any key." Dante looked at the locket beneath her fingers. "Maybe you do." The ballroom lights flickered back on. The guests slowly rose, but Dante remained beside Elena, one hand resting protectively at the small of her back. Vanessa approached with fury, burning through her polished smile. "This entire disaster began when that waitress entered the room. Have security remove her." Dante turned toward her. "She is not a waitress. Her name is Elena Marlowe." Elena looked up, startled that he had remembered after seeing it only once on her employee badge. Vanessa crossed her arms. "Whatever her name is, she has embarrassed this family." Dante's gaze became dangerously still. "The only embarrassment tonight is that a woman who saved my life was mocked in my home." The room went silent. He faced the hotel manager who had allowed Vanessa to humiliate Elena earlier. "Her shift is over. Pay her for the month." The manager nodded quickly. Elena pulled away from Dante's hand. "I don't want money I didn't earn." A few guests exchanged amused glances, expecting Dante to be offended. Instead, something almost warm passed through his eyes. "Then earn it," he said. "Help me discover why 2 men risked entering my hotel to find you." "I don't work for criminals. Tonight, criminals are already working against you." Elena hated that he was right. Dante led her through a private corridor guarded by men in dark suits. They entered his office on the 32nd floor, where Chicago glittered beyond windows stretching from floor to ceiling. The room was cold and immaculate, except for a framed photograph turned face down on his desk. Elena noticed his hand pause near it before he pushed it farther away. Even powerful men hid wounds. Dante handed her the burner phone. On its screen was a photograph taken outside her apartment 3 days earlier. Elena was carrying groceries while helping her elderly neighbor climb the steps. Beneath the image were 4 words. "Find the Moretti ledger first." "I have never seen that message," she said, "but my mother worked as a bookkeeper when I was a child. She never told me for whom." Dante's jaw tightened. "Her name? Rosa Marlowe." For the first time that night, the feared Mafia boss looked shaken. He opened a locked drawer and removed an old newspaper clipping. The photograph showed Rosa standing beside Dante's father at a charity banquet nearly 20 years ago. "Your mother uncovered someone stealing from my family," Dante said. "She disappeared before she could identify the traitor." "She didn't disappear. She raised me alone until she got sick." Elena opened her locket with trembling fingers. Inside was not a photograph, but a thin piece of folded paper covered in numbers. She had seen it 1,000 times and assumed it was meaningless. Dante unfolded it carefully, his shoulder brushing hers as they leaned over the desk. The numbers formed account codes and initials, but one symbol made his face turn cold. It belonged to someone inside his own organization. Suddenly, a crash came from the hallway. Dante pushed Elena behind him as the office door opened. His oldest bodyguard entered, breathing hard. "The captured men are gone," he said. "Someone on our security team released them." Elena looked at the paper again and noticed one set of initials matching the name engraved on the bodyguard's watch. She slowly reached for Dante's hand beneath the desk and traced 2 letters against his palm. Dante understood immediately, but gave no sign. He simply moved closer to Elena and addressed the man with chilling calm. "Lock down the building." The bodyguard smiled. "Already done." Then Elena felt Dante slip a small access card into her hand as he whispered without looking at her, "When I turn off the lights, run to the elevator." But Elena saw the bodyguard reaching inside his coat, and she knew Dante would not be fast enough. Instead of running, she stepped forward and dropped the champagne bucket from the desk onto the man's foot. As he stumbled, Dante struck his wrist, disarmed him, and pinned him against the wall before the weapon could be raised. Guards rushed in seconds later. Dante did not look at the traitor. He looked only at Elena. "I told you to run." Her breathing was unsteady, but her voice remained firm. "And leave you alone with a man who betrayed you? No." Something changed in Dante's face, a crack in the wall he had built around himself. He stepped closer, gently brushed a shard of glass from her hair, and said, "No one has chosen to stay in a very long time." Before Elena could answer, the burner phone rang. Dante put it on speaker. A distorted voice filled the office. "Midnight tomorrow. Bring Rosa Marlowe's daughter and the ledger, or we bury the truth with both of you." The call ended, and Elena stared at the city below. What truth? Dante turned the paper over and found a sentence written in faded ink. His younger brother was not killed by a rival. He was killed by a Moretti. Dante's eyes lifted to Elena, and the warmth vanished beneath something far more dangerous. "Your mother knew who murdered my brother," he said, "and whoever did it believes you know too." By sunrise, Elena Marlowe's apartment had been torn apart, and the only photograph of her mother was missing. She stood in the doorway beneath the grey Chicago morning, Dante Moretti's jacket still wrapped around her shoulders, while 2 of his guards searched the broken rooms. Drawers had been emptied, cushions sliced open, and the silver box where Elena kept her mother's letters lay crushed beside the window. Dante entered without speaking. The feared Mafia boss moved through the damage with controlled stillness, but when he saw Elena kneel to gather the torn pieces of Rosa's photograph, anger sharpened his face. "They came here while we were at the hotel," Elena whispered. "They knew exactly where to look." Dante crouched beside her, ignoring the dust on his expensive suit. He took the damaged photograph from her trembling fingers and placed it safely inside his coat. "You will not stay here again." Elena looked up. "You don't get to decide where I live. Someone entered your home and waited for you to return. And being taken to a Mafia estate is supposed to make me feel safer?" His jaw tightened, but he did not order her. Instead, he lowered his voice. "Come because you choose to live, Elena, not because I command you." The restraint in his words unsettled her more than his power. She finally nodded, and Dante extended his hand, allowing her to decide whether to take it. She did. An hour later, they arrived at the Moretti estate outside the city, a stone mansion surrounded by bare trees, iron gates, and armed security. Elena expected cold luxury, but the first thing she noticed inside was the silence. No family photographs, no laughter, no sign that anyone truly lived there. Dante led her into the library, where old financial records had been stacked across a long table. "The initials on your mother's paper belong to Carlo Moretti," he said. "My uncle." Elena stared at him. Carlo was more than family. According to every newspaper article she had ever read, he was Dante's advisor, the man who had raised him after his father died. "You think he killed your brother?" "I think my mother's ledger frightened someone enough to destroy your home." Before Elena could respond, the library doors opened. Carlo Moretti entered with silver hair, a tailored navy suit, and the warm smile of a beloved relative. "Dante, you should have called me." His eyes shifted toward Elena and the smile remained, but something colder appeared beneath it. "So this is Rosa's daughter." Elena felt Dante step closer until his shoulder nearly touched hers. "You knew her mother?" he asked. Carlo sighed as if recalling an old tragedy. "Rosa stole confidential records and vanished. Your father spared her because she had a child." Elena's shame flared into anger. "My mother was not a thief." "Of course you would believe that." Carlo's gaze travelled over her uniform and Dante's jacket around her body. Women in desperate circumstances often create noble stories for their children. Dante's voice cut through the room. Use her name with respect. Carlo's smile disappeared for half a second. Then he placed a folder on the table. Inside were copies of bank transfers showing payments from Rosa Marlowe to a rival crime family during the months before Dante's brother died. Elena read the pages twice, her stomach twisting. These are false. The signatures match, Carlo said. Rosa sold information, and now her daughter appears carrying the missing account codes. That is not coincidence. Dante studied the documents without revealing what he believed. Elena watched his face become unreadable, and the first fragile trust between them began to crack. Ask him where he found those, she said. Carlo answered before Dante could. In your father's private archive. They have been sealed for years. Elena noticed a faint purple mark on the folder's corner, the same ink stain her hotel manager had carried on his fingers while signing her termination papers. These weren't sealed for years, she said. They were printed at the Moretti Hotel last night. Carlo's eyes hardened. Dante picked up one page and saw the hotel's nearly invisible security watermark. The evidence had been manufactured. Carlo gave a disappointed laugh. You would trust a hotel employee over your own blood? I trust proof, Dante said, and this proves someone expected me to blame her. A phone rang on the table. It belonged to Elena, though she had not seen it since leaving her apartment. Dante answered before she could touch it. A man's voice said, Miss Marlowe, your landlord has sold your debt. You now owe $200,000 payable before midnight. Elena went pale. That's impossible. Carlo adjusted his cufflinks. Debt can become expensive when dangerous men purchase it. Dante ended the call and looked directly at his uncle. You bought her debt. I protected the family from a liability. Carlo moved closer to Elena. Give me the original ledger and your debt disappears. Refuse, and every employer in this city will learn that Rosa Marlowe's daughter helped murder a Moretti. Elena's hands curled at her sides. Dante could end the threat with one command, but she stepped forward before he spoke. My mother spent her life protecting me from whatever your family became. I will not sell her truth to you. Carlo's expression turned cruel. Then you will lose everything. She already lost enough, Dante said. From this moment forward, her debt belongs to me. Elena spun toward him. I am not something you can purchase. I did not purchase you. Dante held her gaze. I purchased the weapon he planned to use against you. Carlo stared at his nephew with open disbelief. You would risk the Moretti alliance for her? Dante moved beside Elena, not in front of her, making it clear they stood together. No, I would destroy the alliance for her. Carlo left with one final warning. Midnight will reveal whether she is worth your empire. When the doors closed, Elena turned away, wounded by the thought that Dante might sacrifice everything because of her. You should let me go. He gently caught her hand. That is what everyone has done to you when staying became difficult. His thumb brushed the bruised place on her wrist. I am not everyone. Before she could answer, a guard rushed into the library carrying a tablet. Security footage showed Elena entering the Moretti Hotel 3 nights earlier and placing something inside Dante's private office. Elena stared at the screen in horror. That isn't me. The woman in the recording had her face, her body, and her uniform. Then the camera image sharpened, revealing the silver locket at her throat. Dante looked from the screen to Elena, but the real locket was no longer around her neck. Someone had taken it from her apartment and used it to frame her. A second video began playing. In it, the false Elena opened Dante's safe and removed a black ledger moments before the first attack. Then a timestamp appeared beneath the footage. The recording had been made tomorrow night. That footage came from a future that someone has already planned for us, Elena whispered, staring at the impossible timestamp glowing on the tablet. The library fell silent as Dante Moretti took the device from his guard and examined every frame. The recording was dated 11:47 p.m. the following night, 13 minutes before the deadline set by the distorted caller. It showed a woman wearing Elena's stolen locket entering his private office, opening the safe and escaping with a black ledger that did not yet exist inside it. It isn't evidence, Dante said, his voice turning dangerously calm. It is an instruction. Elena looked at him. They want us to believe I will steal the ledger tomorrow. Or they want my security team waiting for you while the real thief enters somewhere else. He ordered the mansion sealed, dismissed every guard except his chief security analyst, and stood beside Elena as the footage was slowed frame by frame. In the reflection of Dante's office window, a man could be seen holding the camera. Only part of his face appeared, but his right hand rested against the glass, revealing a heavy gold ring engraved with the Moretti crest. Dante's expression hardened. That ring belonged to my father. Elena remembered Carlo adjusting his cufflinks in the library, but she had seen no ring on his hand. Could your uncle have it? Carlo claimed it disappeared the night my brother died. Dante zoomed in. Beneath the ring was a thin burn scar crossing the man's wrist. Elena's breath stopped. She had seen that scar before, not on Carlo, but in one of her mother's old photographs. Rosa stood outside a small neighborhood clinic beside a young man whose face had been torn away from the picture. His wrist remained visible, marked by the same scar. My mother knew him, Elena said. The photograph was in the box they destroyed. Dante immediately called the guards searching her apartment, but they confirmed the picture was gone. Then Elena noticed something else in the false footage. The woman wearing her locket walked carefully, favoring her left knee. Elena did not. Vanessa Vale had complained all evening about an old dance injury in her left leg. Dante saw the realization in Elena's face before she spoke. Vanessa. 20 minutes later, security brought Vanessa into the library. Her elegant silver dress had been replaced by a cream coat, but her confidence remained intact. You dragged me from my hotel suite because a waitress invented another accusation, she asked. Dante placed the tablet before her. Where did you get Elena's locket? Vanessa's gaze flickered toward the screen. It lasted less than a second, but Dante saw it. I have never touched her cheap jewelry. Elena stepped closer, holding Vanessa's eyes. Then you won't mind removing your gloves. Vanessa laughed. This is absurd. Dante said nothing. He simply looked at her, and the room seemed to lose all warmth. Vanessa slowly removed her right glove. Her hand was unmarked. When she pulled off the left, a fresh red line circled her wrist where a chain had recently broken. Elena recognized the clasp. Vanessa had worn her locket while recording the video. You entered my apartment, Elena said. I would never step inside that place. But someone working for you did. Dante's analyst placed a second image on the screen, showing Vanessa's driver entering Elena's building hours before the break-in. Vanessa's polished expression finally cracked. Carlo told me she was dangerous. He said Rosa's daughter would destroy the alliance and get Dante killed. So you framed her, Dante said. I protected you. Vanessa reached for him, but Dante stepped back. You protected the marriage contract your father wanted signed by midnight. Her eyes filled with angry tears. I spent 3 years standing beside you while you treated me like furniture, and now you risk everything for a woman you met last night. Elena flinched, but Dante moved to her side. I noticed her because she saw danger while everyone else watched themselves. I trust her because she had every reason to run and chose to stay. Vanessa's voice sharpened. Then ask your brave little hero what her mother did to your brother. She pulled a flash drive from inside her coat and threw it onto the table. Carlo gave me that, Rosa Marlowe's confession. The recording began with static, then Rosa's tired voice filled the library. She admitted changing the Moretti account codes and meeting Dante's brother, Luca, on the night he died. Elena's knees weakened. Dante caught her before she fell, one arm around her waist, and lowered her into a chair. The audio continued. Rosa said she had led Luca to the warehouse where the ambush occurred. Elena covered her mouth, unable to breathe. My mother helped kill him. Dante knelt in front of her, ignoring everyone else in the room. Look at me. A confession given under threat is not truth. You don't know that. Neither do you. He took her hands, his grip firm but gentle. And I will not let another person decide what you deserve before we learn the whole story. Vanessa stared at him in disbelief. You still choose her? Dante rose without releasing Elena's hand. There was never a choice between you. His phone rang. Carlo's name appeared on the screen, but when Dante answered, a woman's voice spoke instead. Elena, your mother lied about dying. Every trace of colour left Elena's face. The caller continued. Rosa Marlowe is alive, and she has been our prisoner for 12 years. A live video opened on the tablet. An older woman sat bound beneath a warehouse light, her hair streaked with grey, her face thinner but unmistakable. Elena stood so quickly the chair fell behind her. "Mom?" Rosa lifted her head toward the camera and began to cry. Then Carlo stepped into view, wearing Dante's father's ring. "Bring Elena and the coded paper to Pier 19 before midnight," he said. "Or this time, Dante, you will watch a Marlowe die because of you." The screen went black. Dante turned toward his weapons cabinet, but Elena caught his arm. "He wants you angry. That means the pier is a trap." "I know. Then what are we going to do?" Dante opened the cabinet and removed not a weapon, but the face-down photograph from his office. He handed it to her. The picture showed Dante, Luca, and Rosa together years earlier, smiling as if they had once been family. Written on the back in Rosa's handwriting were 5 words: "Luca survived the warehouse fire." Elena looked up in shock. Before Dante could explain, a gunshot shattered the library window, and he threw himself over her as a bullet struck the wall where her head had been. Glass rained across the library as Dante covered Elena with his body, one arm locked around her waist while his guards rushed toward the shattered window. "Stay beneath me," he said, his voice steady despite the thin line of blood running from his shoulder. Elena touched the torn fabric of his suit and felt panic rise. "You were hit." A graze. He pulled her behind the stone fireplace as a second shot struck the desk. The shooter had chosen the only angle that exposed Elena, confirming what Dante already knew. Carlo did not merely want the coded paper. He wanted Rosa's daughter silenced before she could understand it. Within minutes, the estate went dark, and Dante's armored car sped toward downtown Chicago through freezing rain. Midnight was less than 2 hours away. Elena sat beside him in the back seat, pressing a clean cloth against his shoulder while his security analyst examined Rosa's message. "Luca survived the warehouse fire," Elena whispered. "Why would my mother write that unless she saw him afterward?" Dante stared through the rain-covered window. "Because she helped him disappear." Then Carlo's confession recording was edited. She led Luca to the warehouse, but maybe she was helping him escape. Dante turned toward her, and for the first time she saw hope fighting its way through years of grief. The analyst separated the audio tracks and found an unnatural break after Rosa's final sentence. A hidden section had been removed. When restored, her full confession filled the car. Rosa had discovered Carlo stealing from the Moretti family. Luca agreed to expose him, but Carlo learned of their plan and arranged the warehouse attack. Rosa changed the account codes to protect the evidence, then helped the wounded Luca escape through a service tunnel. Carlo captured her days later and told everyone she had died. "My brother may still be alive," Dante said. Elena held his gaze. "And my mother survived 12 years because she refused to give Carlo what he wanted. The coded paper was not the ledger. It was a map showing where Rosa had hidden it. The numbers led beneath Pier 19. Dante ordered his convoy to stop. He called every senior member of the Moretti organization and placed the restored confession on a secure broadcast. Carlo's voice could be heard in the background, threatening Rosa. "At midnight, the council expects me to sign an alliance with the Valle family," Dante said into the camera. "I will not." His advisors erupted in protest. Without the alliance, rival families could challenge his authority. Dante looked at Elena before continuing. "Carlo Moretti murdered loyal men, framed Rosa Marlowe, and endangered the woman who exposed him. Any person who still supports him after hearing this is no longer part of my family." Elena's breath caught. He was risking his empire publicly, not hiding her as a weakness. Carlo joined the broadcast from the warehouse, smiling beside the bound Rosa. "You would throw away everything your father built for a hotel employee?" Dante's expression became cold enough to silence every voice on the call. "Her name is Elena Marlowe. She showed more loyalty in one night than you showed in 30 years. He ended the broadcast and turned to Elena. "You stay in the car when we reach the pier." "No, Carlo wants you there. He also expects me to be frightened and obedient." Elena removed the coded paper from her pocket. "My mother trusted me to finish this. I am going with you." Dante started to argue, but she placed her hand over his. "You said you would let me choose." His jaw tightened. Then he gave her a protective vest and adjusted the straps himself, his fingers careful against her curves. "You remain beside me." At Pier 19, fog rolled across the dark water as they entered the abandoned warehouse together. Carlo stood on an upper platform with Vanessa and 4 armed men. Rosa sat nearby, bound to a chair. Vanessa's face was pale. Carlo said no one would be hurt. "You believed what was convenient," Elena replied. Carlo demanded the coded paper. Elena held it up but did not release it. "Let my mother walk toward us first." Carlo laughed. "You have no power here." Elena looked toward the security camera above him. "Actually, every Moretti captain is watching." Dante's analyst had taken control of the warehouse feed, broadcasting Carlo's confession live. Carlo's men hesitated. 2 lowered their weapons. Vanessa stepped away from him. Furious, Carlo dragged Rosa to the edge of the platform and threatened to push her into the freezing river below. Dante moved forward, but Elena stopped him. She had noticed Rosa tapping her foot 3 times, pausing, then twice. It was a childhood signal meaning "look beneath you." Elena saw a rusted release lever under the railing. She threw the coded paper toward Carlo. As he reached for it, Rosa kicked the lever. A cargo net dropped from the ceiling, trapping 2 guards and knocking Carlo away from the edge. Dante's men surged forward. Elena ran up the stairs, freed her mother, and shielded her as Vanessa grabbed Carlo's fallen weapon. "Dante ruined my life for you," Vanessa shouted, aiming at Elena. "No," Elena said, stepping between Vanessa and Rosa. "You ruined it when you chose cruelty over truth." Vanessa's hand shook. Dante approached slowly, placing himself beside Elena, rather than forcing her behind him. "Put it down," he said. Vanessa looked at the cameras, the guards, and the man who had chosen Elena before the entire Moretti empire. Her courage collapsed, and the weapon slipped from her fingers. Then Carlo tore free from the cargo net and lunged toward Dante with a hidden blade. Elena saw him first. She shoved Dante aside, but Carlo changed direction and seized her, pressing the blade against her throat. "One step," he warned, "and she dies." Dante froze. Carlo smiled and began backing toward the river door. Then a voice came from the darkness behind him. "You already tried to kill my family once." A tall man with a burn scar across his wrist stepped into the warehouse light. Dante stared at the brother he had mourned for 5 years. "Luca?" Carlo's grip loosened in shock. Elena twisted free and ran toward Dante, but Carlo raised the blade again. A struggle followed, and Dante pulled Elena against his chest just as Carlo fell beneath the closing security gate. Police sirens sounded beyond the pier. Rosa reached for Luca, sobbing with relief. Dante looked down at Elena as if the rest of the world had disappeared. "Are you hurt?" "No." She touched his injured shoulder. "But you are." Before he could answer, the warehouse lights flickered and the analyst's voice came through Dante's earpiece. "Boss, the black ledger is gone. Someone removed it while we were inside." Dante turned toward the river. A boat was already disappearing into the fog, carrying the one piece of evidence that could clear Rosa and expose every traitor in the Moretti Empire. Then Elena opened her hand. Resting in her palm was a tiny waterproof memory card she had taken from beneath her mother's chair. Rosa smiled through her tears. That ledger was always a decoy. But before anyone could celebrate, Dante's knees buckled from the blood he had hidden beneath his coat, and Elena caught him as he collapsed into her arms. "Dante, stay with me," Elena begged as the freezing warehouse floor blurred beneath her knees. Blood had soaked through his shirt, but his hand still searched for hers before the paramedics lifted him onto the stretcher. "The memory card," he whispered. "Keep it safe." Elena closed her fingers around it. "I'm keeping you safe first." For the first time, Dante Moretti smiled without armor around his heart. 3 days later, morning sunlight poured through the windows of a private hospital room overlooking Lake Michigan. Dante woke to find Elena asleep in a chair beside his bed, her head resting near his hand. Rosa sat by the window, wrapped in a warm blanket, while Luca stood beside her with the burn scar visible beneath his rolled sleeve. The brothers had spent hours speaking about the years Carlo had stolen from them. Luca had remained hidden because Carlo threatened Rosa and promised to destroy Dante if he returned. Now the memory card had changed everything. It contained Rosa's complete financial records, recordings of Carlo ordering Luca's murder, and proof that he had controlled the attack at the hotel. Every captain who had supported Carlo abandoned him before sunrise. Vanessa accepted a deal to testify, admitting that jealousy had made her easy to manipulate. Carlo was taken into federal custody, stripped of the power he had protected with lies. Dante watched Elena stir awake. "You should be resting," he said. She looked at the bandage across his shoulder. "That sounds better coming from someone who didn't collapse into my arms." "I knew you would catch me." The quiet certainty in his voice made her eyes shine. He reached for her hand. "You saved my life before we met, didn't you?" Elena frowned. Luca placed an old newspaper photograph on the bed. It showed a teenage Elena outside a neighborhood clinic, holding pressure against the wound of an unidentified man after a warehouse fire. She remembered the injured stranger her mother had ordered her never to discuss. "That was you," she whispered to Luca. He nodded. "Rosa got me out, but Elena kept me alive until help came." Dante looked at her as if another missing piece of his heart had returned. The woman mocked as invisible had protected his family long before she knew their name. "Everyone kept asking why I noticed you," he said. "Maybe some part of me already knew." Elena looked down at her curvy body beneath the simple hospital dress Rosa had brought her. "People usually notice me for different reasons." Dante gently lifted her chin. "They saw what allowed them to feel superior. I saw the woman who protected a child during an attack, challenged a traitor, walked into danger for her mother, and refused to leave me alone." A week later, Dante called a meeting in the Moretti Hotel ballroom. The same chandeliers glowed overhead. The same guests who had laughed at Elena stood beneath them, suddenly careful with their expressions. Elena entered wearing a deep green dress chosen because she loved it, not because it hid her body. Rosa walked beside her, and Luca followed with Dante. The hotel manager stepped forward to apologize, but Elena stopped him. "I don't need an apology made because you fear the man standing behind me. I needed respect when you thought I had no one." The manager lowered his eyes. Dante moved beside her and addressed the room. "Elena Marlowe has been appointed director of the Moretti Foundation, overseeing protection and housing for women threatened by debt, abuse, or exploitation. Anyone who questions her authority answers directly to me." Elena turned toward him in surprise. "You created a position for me." "No, you described the work you wanted to do. I gave it a building." He handed her the papers, but no contract bound her to him. The choice remained hers. She accepted because it was her future, not a favor. Months passed, and the once silent Moretti estate filled with life. Rosa recovered in the garden. Luca rebuilt his place beside his brother. Elena transformed empty rooms into offices for the foundation, helping women who had been treated as if survival was something shameful. Dante remained feared by his enemies, but at home he learned to laugh again. He remembered how Elena took her coffee, listened when she disagreed, and never touched her without first reading the answer in her eyes. One evening, during a charity celebration in the ballroom, Elena stood near the velvet booth where their story had begun. Dante sat down and held out his hand. "May I?" She smiled and settled onto his lap willingly this time, while the room watched in silence. He leaned close and whispered the words no one had expected that first night. "You were never too much, Elena. They were simply too small to recognize you." Then he placed a ring in her palm and knelt before her in front of everyone. Elena did not cry because she had finally been chosen. She cried because she no longer believed she needed anyone's choice to prove her worth. Still, she chose him. The Mafia boss who had lived through control chose vulnerability, and the woman taught to apologize for existing finally found a home where she never had to shrink. Their story began with danger, humiliation, and a whisper. It ended with truth, family, dignity, and love. But tell us, would you have trusted Dante after that first night, or would you have walked away? Share your answer, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories where the person everyone overlooks becomes the one no one can forget.